Good evening. I am Sabrina Clark, and I am the president of the Atlanta Suburban Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. And it is my pleasure, on behalf of our 409 chapter members, to welcome you to our Mental Health Monday webinar. And tonight's topic is professionals dealing with stress and anxiety. We are super excited to have both of our amazing panelists join us this evening. I will tell you that I really feel that self-care is so important to each and every one of us. But there are so many individuals, young and old, there is no restrictions as it relates to age, that are stressed to the max and really can't find an hour or two for their much needed self-care activity, which sometimes may be something as simple as just a nap or a walk. I am excited to hear from our panelists this evening and hope that you are as well. And so without further ado, I want to pass the baton to our Chair of Physical and Mental Health, Teresa Montgomery. Again, thanks for joining us this evening, and we look forward to getting feedback as well as questions from you.
Good evening.
Teresa.
Good evening, and welcome again to the mental health webinar this Monday. I am Teresa Montgomery, as she says, Chair of the PMH Committee. And I do want to introduce our panelists. Tonight, we have Simone Cox, and we have Deanna Vivian, and our moderator is Donna Wilkerson. So I'm going to give it over to Donna. Thank you.
Thank you, SARS, and welcome everyone to this amazing event. We hope that it will be a blessing to you and that it will minister to you and that we'll be able to have a lively discussion about what we as professionals have to manage in our daily lives. I would like to first introduce Ms. Simone Cox. She is the Department Chair of Counseling and Psychology and Human Relations at Point University. She is the owner of Release Counseling and Consulting, where she provides services as a certified counselor. She is very passionate about tending to the needs and the mental health care of our community. She is married and has 2 adult sons. Our second panelist is Jo Vivian. She is the executive director of the C.T. Vivian Foundation, and she is a licensed therapist and a trauma-focused therapist as she approaches trauma-related issues involving people, young girls who have been victims of sex trafficking, particularly young girls ages 12 to 17. And she is the owner of 180 Counseling. And she's married to Al Vivian, and they have 2 adult sons. Welcome, ladies. So let's get the conversation started. So first, let's hear a little bit about your journey to becoming a therapist. And we'll start with you, Ms. Cox.
Okay. I knew I wanted to help people. I just didn't know in what capacity. And then as I progressed in my adult life, I realized how many people in our community were hurting or needed help. And there wasn't a lot of therapists or a lot of support that looked like me. And so what I decided was to be part of the solution. And so I decided to go back to school and become a licensed professional counselor and a licensed marriage and family therapist. And I find that that gives me great fulfillment in being able to assist those in our community to deal with and move beyond their mental health issues.
And I stand corrected because I will get hazed for this later. Jo Vivian is a proud member of the East Point College Park chapter of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, and I had the blessed honor of being pledged by her. So, Sarah Vivian, can you please elaborate on how your journey into therapy started?
Oh my gosh, it started with statements like that. It just makes me realize people need therapists. That's a really good question. It's funny. I don't get asked that much, but every time I get asked that question, I literally have to pause and process what brought me here. I've always said that I've been a jack of all trades and master of none. I have changed my profession multiple times, but the common thread in every profession I have pursued is that I've always been able to build rapport with people and help them with their struggles. I realized that that was a gift, and it was a gift that I was sitting on. And so I decided to go back and get my master's in clinical mental health counseling. So that's the first part of it. The second part of it is mental health and its issues have hit very close to home for me. I have a sister, my older sister, who was diagnosed with schizophrenia at a very early age, and it haunted our lives. I don't know if many of you have ever experienced living with someone with a mental health disorder, but it is a challenge and it stretches you in ways that you never thought you could be stretched. I learned so much more about what we could have done for her. I wish I knew then what I knew now. But, you know, of course, we are in a culture that kind of shuns mental health care. I was grateful that I had a mother who wasn't that way, but it didn't mean that we didn't have family members who shunned us, neighbors who shunned us. So it was a challenge. And I felt that I had the ability to help people never know what my sister knew, that she would get the help, or people could get the help that my sister didn't necessarily get. So those are the two things that drive me to do what I do.
Thank you for sharing and opening up to let us know your journey. So let's start the conversation. What exactly is anxiety and depression? And what have we seen? How have we seen it manifest in our professional occupations?
Anxiety. Okay. Anxiety is a result of long-term stress that doesn't go away. And so a lot of times people will say, I'm so stressed out and I don't know what to do. But stress is triggered by something. And so once that external issue goes away, so should the stress. But when it doesn't go away and we continue to worry about things or focus on the past, and it begins to permeate areas of our lives, that's when it's probably turned into anxiety. And this has been increased based on my experience. There has been an increase in that in the workplace. People are juggling more things, trying to do more at work, dealing with families, community things. If they're participating in that, they're trying to do a lot of things in a limited amount of time and not really taking care of themselves. And so they're getting burnout. One of the things that I'm sure Joe will mention. And then that burnout is really causing them to lag in their lives and causing their performance to suffer, not just at home and in the community, but at work as well.
Joe, what are your thoughts?
In terms of anxiety, Simone is right on the money. It's that constant worry, you know, that wringing of our hands. You know, you could see your grandmother wringing her hands or twirling her hair or tapping her foot all the time. You know, you've got family members who can't keep their foot still. They're constantly bouncing. It's that nonstop racing of your brain where it just does not shut down. You know, we quite often want to equate anxiety with stress. You can be stressed and not be anxious. Odds are, if you're anxious, you're also stressed. You know, so it's understanding the difference between the two and finding ways to manage, because it can be managed. I think the stigma about it, of course, has to be removed, just like the stigma with depression. And depression is very common. It's probably the most common mental health disorder that we deal with, because anytime we lose anything, there's this sense of sadness that we might feel. If you've lost a loved one, if you've lost your favorite earrings, I mean, even sadness comes with that. If you've had a relationship that was healthy and they just moved to another state, there's a level of sadness that comes with that. So that feeling of sadness, not wanting to engage in the things that used to make you happy, or finding that your mood state is so low that You may not even want to get out of the bed. That's then when you have moved into what we call depression. So sadness is normal. Depression is when you're no longer functioning at a level that is acceptable even to yourself, but most certainly to the standards of the people who have been engaging with you on a regular recurring basis, such as an employer. You know, you're no longer putting out the level of work that you were putting out before. Maybe you have a younger child and used to love to read to your child every night before going to bed, and you're no longer doing that. You may find yourself with sleep disturbance, either sleeping too much or sleeping too little. You may have problems with weight, either it's going up or it's going down. You could find yourself being irritable, stressed. And here's the thing, and Simone, you and I have talked about this. It's rare anymore that you're anxious and not depressed, or depressed and not anxious. They're kissing cousins, and they run together quite often.
So as far as our professional lives, as far as that is concerned, when we are operating in our different occupations, what are the telltale signs that you are burnt out, that you can no longer do this job at the level that you're expected to perform?
Simone, you answer that one.
There's a sense of dread that you don't really want to go to work. When you're there, you don't really want to be bothered with anybody. You may be irritable. You may be isolating, and you just don't feel like doing the work.
Yeah.
Or you might feel overwhelmed, and that can contribute to things as well. That burnout feeling is when the gas is gone. You've put everything out there, and you've not really poured back into yourself. And so now you've done everything, or you're trying to do everything, and it's just not working. Nothing is working.
And when we realize that I'm stuck, how do we move forward to become unstuck? Because a lot of times we're in these professions and we've worked so hard to achieve these degrees and get these high-powered jobs, and we're successful and we are moving forward and progressing and prospering. But the job itself is stressful. And we have to figure out how to balance the stress of the job with our love for the job, or our love for our chosen profession. Like, for instance, I'm a dentist and I love it. I've been a dentist for 33 years, but there are times when I don't want to deal with your pain right now or your complaint, but I have to, because it's still my passion. And you find yourself pushing yourself to do more and more because it is something that you love to do. But at the end of the day, you're exhausted. Not so much that I dread and I don't want to do this job, but the demands of the job are exhausting.
But you're wise enough to know that you need to pivot. And I think there's that space before burnout, and then there's burnout. So I'm going to first talk about burnout because that's where we started. We all know the only remedy for burnout is to stop doing what you're doing and sit it down somewhere, or as Medea would say, set it down and focus on you for a moment. You can't give what you don't have. And so you have emptied your tank and you're going to work expecting to produce at the same level that you always have. The result that you're getting is that you're being called into your boss's office because your work is failing. Your coworkers don't want to be around you because you're grumpy and angry. You're having trouble sleeping. You're gaining weight because when you're stressed like that, your cortisol levels go up and you can't lose weight if you want to. And then we stress eat anyway. The only way to literally overcome burnout is to go home. Now, the problem with that is most people say, but I can't afford it, right? I need my good government job and I can't go home. And so that's when you start looking at what resources you have. The Family Leave Act is in place for things just like this. If you have vacation time, take your vacation. And while you're on vacation, take the time to reassess, is this the job for me? Sometimes we're not just burned out because we're doing too much. Sometimes we're burned out because we're profession, or we're working for the wrong company, or we have a boss that's toxic, or a culture that's toxic. So taking that time to evaluate why you are burned out is equally as important as taking the time to retain.
We have a wonderful question from Kristen that says, what are some of the ways that you can communicate with your boss or supervisor that you're burned out? This can be a tough conversation, especially if you don't want to feel like a failure or risk losing your job.
Yeah. The first thing I would recommend is write a letter. I would not walk into my boss and just start talking. I would not. The level of anxiety and stress you're feeling, potentially depression you might be carrying because you're burned out, it's too high to just sit down and have a conversation. You probably will either explode or you're going to boo-hoo, one of the two. So I would recommend just take the time to write, find out what is bothering you. Why am I burned out? Why am I so stressed? And identify it for yourself. And then after you have written that letter once, rewrite that letter again and take out all the things that you know you shouldn't say. And then after you've written it twice, rewrite it the third time and then let your friend read it until the letter in and of itself is professional, it's clear, you have communicated what the problem is, and you have communicated from to your boss what you're asking them to do. And once you are able to do that, then you can go in and verbalize what you have written. But I never encourage people to go in without first practicing at home before talking to your boss.
And fine-tuning exactly what your issues are before you present them. That's a good suggestion. You had something also, Simone?
I think Joe is right on. I was just going to say you have to be able to have a conversation without emotion taking over, because then it's ineffective, or it's not as effective as you'd like it to be. But certainly, I think the critical piece here is asking for what you'd like, what you need in the job, whether or not it's to be able to delegate some things or to change portions of your job responsibilities or what have you. But what's going to make you a better employee for that employer?
Let's talk about toxic work environments. How do we communicate? I know there's a whole system in place of how we can anonymously report things that feel like, workplace bullying and all those types of things, but we still have to go back and work with those same people. So what type of coping strategies do you suggest in managing a toxic workplace environment? Either one.
Go ahead, Joe. You want to start us off?
I threw one at you earlier, right? It's my turn.
It's your turn.
I'll take it.
I'm gonna start pointing.
Because we're doing the polite thing.
Yeah.
We're like,
I know y'all just. I'm gonna let. Yeah. No, this is open. This is open conversation. So let's talk. Jump in.
Listen, my mouth gets to go, and I don't know how to shut it up. So you point when it's my turn, okay?
Okay, I'm gonna start pointing.
There are all types of people who make up the workforce. You have people who are bodacious, and they are just going to go ahead and say what they need to say. They're going to report whom they need to report. They'll quit their job and they won't care. And I find that level of comfort is greater in millennials and younger than it is in traditionalists and boomers, because we were taught to get a job, keep that same job, retire from that job, and get your gold watch or silver watch, whatever they give now, right? So we're more likely to put up with foolishness in the workplace the older you are than the younger you are. And that's just a fact. And then there are some people who really are burdened by fear. Fear is very crippling. And I always tell my clients that, fear never leaves you. You leave it with every step that you take. And so once again, you will find this is my pattern. I believe in conversation with yourself before you have conversation with people. You need to understand, just like we talked about before, and Simone said it well, if you don't know what you want, going to talk to somebody really is a waste of time. You know, if you're not a part of the solution, you're part of the problem. You've heard that phrase. So being able to sit down with yourself and assess the work environment and ask yourself, what is it that I don't like? What can we do different so that my work environment is less toxic? And then you have to ask yourself, if I go in and talk to somebody, is it worth it to me? It doesn't matter if it's worth it to anybody else if it's not worth it to you. There's always going to be a risk of repercussions in anything that you do. Nothing is guaranteed. But if it's worth it to you, you will take that forward step to either go to HR, sit down and have the conversation with your boss, if it's your boss that is problematic, or with that coworker, whomever you need to have your discussion with, if you recognize that it's worth it to you.
Simone?
I think that's correct. If it is, especially if it's a coworker or someone that you have to interact with on a regular basis, I think you almost have to address it. And one of the things that I would say is to look at how you can change maybe something that you're doing, because there's no guarantee that the other person will change. So how can you maybe alter how you're doing things to make it less stressful and anxiety producing for you? Because as Joe mentioned, there's a risk, and there's a risk that nothing will change with that person or with the environment. And at that point, you have to ask yourself some important questions. In what ways can I deal with this situation here? Do I want to continue to work in this type of environment, or is there something else that I can be doing?
So a question, and I'm sorry, go ahead.
Just something that Simone said that's so powerful is that because you can't change anybody else.
Right. You can't change them.
Yeah.
And the thing that we had a wonderful question in the chat about, so you do those things that you said, Joe, and you write it down, and then you evaluate whether or not, how would I do this in order to make this environment healthy for me? And a lot of times it's a hierarchy of how we do that. We report to our superior, and then our superior reports to HR, and blah, blah, blah. If all of those steps taken fail, right? But you still need your job. So what is the best way to remain in that environment and maintain your peace?
Well, I'm a woman of faith. And so I am going to say, for me, that's where I go. I used to work for Ford Motor Company. I was at world headquarters in Dearborn, Michigan. I was the only female and the only Black person in the marketing department. And I had a new boss, and all of a sudden I wasn't doing anything right. Literally nothing. He would make snide comments. I'm the only manager that's female and Black in every meeting we have. And he would just say some of the rudest, meanest things to me. And it bothered my counterparts more than it bothered me. I did a whole lot of praying during that time period because I didn't want to lose my job. I couldn't afford to lose my job. At that point, Al had just started being self-employed. We had 2 little kids. I needed my job. But the one thing that I made sure I did was I did my job with excellence. There was nothing that he could criticize about my work. He may have criticized me, but he could not criticize my work. To make a very long story short, the end of it was that I got the absolute best promotion that I've ever had in my life with the largest amount of money. And I'm sure that man still turns over sometimes and goes, why did I do that?
Control your controllables, right?
Right. So I kept me from going over the edge. I knew I needed my job. I did the things that I needed to do to manage my own emotions. And for me, it was my relationship with God that got me through. You have to
Yeah, a
find.
lot of times you have to pray a lot of that out. And since we're headed that direction, let's talk about coping mechanisms and boundaries and self-care and all the things that we need to do in order for us to navigate through this. Because like you said, we need our jobs. So we have to do this. So how do we do this and maintain our sanity? So I'm gonna we can't assume that everybody is a person of faith, but we have declared that we are. So Simone, as a Christian counselor, what do you recommend to your clients?
I recommend several things. Prayer is definitely beneficial. Meditation. I recommend doing some things that help you manage your anxiety and stress, whether or not that's exercising, doing self-care activities. It could be something as easy as taking a bubble bath at night or going for a walk on your lunch break. Participating in activities at church with people who are supportive and uplifting if you attend a church. Setting boundaries. Sometimes it can be hard to say no, and sometimes people won't like it. But if you are steadfast in your boundaries, people will get over it and they'll respect it, and things will adjust to the boundaries that you've set. Of course, counseling is a great way to take care of yourself and kind of get that stress and anxiety out of you. And I think that's the important thing, is to be able to release it somehow. And like Joe said, focusing on you, not necessarily all the other things that are going on, but just making sure that you have time for you, which will help alleviate some of the stress.
Joe, let's talk about boundaries.
Let's talk about boundaries.
So, so a lot of times we are, especially as professional Black women, we hold the world on our shoulders. And we do that as a badge of honor. I can do all things. I can do it all. I can manage this high-powered career. I can manage my family life, my social life, my community affairs. I have it until we get home and we're exhausted. So let's talk about boundaries in order to help us manage life.
Well, first of all, the statement that I can do it all is truly a lie from the pit of hell. We can't do it all. We cannot do it all.
That's a curse, right?
It is a curse, right? I mean, realistically, no man can do everything. No one has all the complete package. If you look at our society, women went from being at home and raising the children, and we fought for our right to vote. We fought for our right to own property. We have fought for our right to have pockets in our dresses. We have fought for our right to divorce and to choose to live our lives as single mothers if that's what we want. But the one thing that has never changed with us getting all of the responsibilities that we have, and we are hitting up against that glass ceiling like crazy, but the one responsibility we have never let go of is being responsible for the children and responsible for the home. And so with all of this outside of the house responsibility we've picked up, we've not let go of anything. We are a jar, and we can only contain so much. And so setting good, healthy boundaries keeps our jar from exploding. That phrase, Black girl magic, it's cute phrase. I don't dislike the phrase, but I wish we would alter it a little bit. Black girl magic gives us the illusion that we can do everything, and we absolutely cannot. No is our very first boundary word. And what is the first thing we tell our children to stop saying to us?
No.
Very first thing, right? And so we learn at an early age that no is not good, but no is very good. No is a complete sentence, and we need to practice it in any way that we can. I love it when what do you call those people who want to sell you things? And
Telemarketers.
telemarketers, that's the word I couldn't find. I love when they call me. I practice no so nicely with them. They go, "Hi, this is Tom from church place." And Tom, I'm so sorry. I really appreciate it, but I am not interested. Thank you so much for calling and have a great day. And they always go, "Well, you too, man. Thank you." And they hang up. But they're
That's a
thrown.
quick no.
Yeah, I'm kind, I'm polite.
Mhm.
I didn't have to strong arm them, but I did say no. I said no. We think no has to sound like that. Work on your no. Be creative with how you say no, but by golly, say no. If you have a hard time telling someone face to face, when you get a phone call and you can see who's calling you and you know you struggle telling that person no, let it go to voicemail. Let it go to voicemail. Listen to the ask and then decide without the pressure of that person what you want to do. And here's the other part, and manage your guilt.
That's what I was going to touch on because, as you say, we are out in the world and we're doing the things that we've worked so hard to accomplish, but we still have held on to the home and our need to be responsible for the people in our homes. And that not only includes husbands and children, but also our parents and who may be aging and we have to care for them and balancing all of that. That's a lot. That's a lot, plus your job. And that's what can also be a source of stress for us. I love my mother. I want to take care of my mother. My mother's ailing and she's not able to take care of herself. I still have to get up and go to work. So what are some of the solutions that you recommend? For my sisters and I, it was hard. We had back to back. My father got sick, then my father died. My mother got sick, then my mother died. But we were wise enough to know we all work. We all have very demanding jobs. And we had to hire somebody. And it was hard for me being guilty of my mother has raised all of us and they have moved heaven and earth to make sure we have everything we need. And now I got to bring somebody in to take care of them. I felt a little guilty doing that, but I had to let that go because like you said, I can't do it all. I can't do it all.
You'll die if you don't. You know, caregivers go at a higher rate. I think like it's 68% of caregivers die before the people they're caring for. Because the caregiver won't say no. They won't let somebody else come in and take care of mama or big mama or daddy or whomever. We have to learn how to put healthy boundaries, and boundaries have to be made out of love. When boundaries are made out of spite or anger, they will boomerang. They have to be made out of love, not only for you, but the person you're caring for. Because if you burn out, then what happens to mama? You don't take care of yourself, what happens to your children or what happens to your relationship with your spouse? So boundaries are actually a kindness that we not only give to ourselves, but we give them to others.
Simone?
It's like that when you're on an airplane and they tell you, you know, if you hit turbulence, put the oxygen mask on yourself first. Because if you are not okay in some way, you can't take care of all of these different responsibilities. And all of the things that you named, from taking care of your children, partner, aging parents, working, these are the things that make it twice as likely that women will have anxiety because of all these added pressures. And so, like Joe mentioned, the boundaries and asking for help. And sometimes we do feel guilty, but we have to recognize that if we are not okay and able to care for ourselves and keep ourselves healthy and whole, that we're no good to anybody else. And we're not going to be at our optimal levels when caring for those around us. So it absolutely is okay to ask for help. And the first part is recognizing that you need the help. And then asking for it.
Very good. This is a wonderful conversation. I'm so enjoying it. One of the questions in our chat, and I'm going to address some of them and bounce these to you. For people who still struggle with people pleasing, what advice could you give them as far as boundaries and self-love are concerned? Simone.
So one of the things that I ask my clients when we're talking about people pleasing is what makes those other people more important than you?
Mm, that's a good
And
word.
and so when you're trying to do everything to please them, how's it affecting how you perceive yourself and how you feel about yourself? And what makes how they feel about you more important than how you feel about you? How is this person infiltrated in your life that they have that they should have that much control over the things that you say and the things that you do? And then another question that I may ask is, what if that person doesn't like something that you do? What then? And we kind of play out the scenarios. What are the ramifications if this one person is not pleased with you? And trying to figure out ways to kind of cope with that. If we say no to this person, and focus more on ourselves and what we can do to make ourselves healthier, uh, you know, just really looking at where did that come from, that people pleasing? And a lot of times it comes from our childhood and not wanting to disappoint our parents and family members, and only receiving praise when we're doing something that's pleasing to the other person. And so we become afraid to not please others, or we feel bad when we disappoint others. And that's something that we kind of have to work through, because we can't please everyone all the time.
What are your thoughts, Joe?
I'm sitting here with my little amen corner going over
I
here.
know, me
All the
too.
time, like, You know, excuse me. The other thing I realized too, we all have superpowers. We can use our superpowers for good and we can use our superpowers for bad, right? And people pleasing in and of itself is neutral. It's how you do it and why you're doing it. And Simone spoke to that piece. I'm happy when I'm cooking a meal and people are pleased with my meal. I want you to be pleased. I am a giver at heart. I love giving gifts and doing things for people, but it doesn't define me, and it's not going to make me feel better about myself. And when people pleasing inches into that category, we need to stop calling it people pleasing and recognize that I'm dealing with lowest self-esteem. And I need to do something so something makes me feel better about me. I need them to say, "Atta girl." I need them to tell me I'm pretty. I need them to tell me I did a good job or that was enough, because I don't have the ability to tell myself that. And so I think changing some of our terminology is very helpful and very useful, because people pleasing is a part of hospitality. There are a lot of people who are very good with being hospitable. They just love it. You've got people in helping professions. I'm in a helping profession. We all are. And we love helping people. And we want them to be pleased with what we do. But when I am doing it because my self-worth is low, I am then giving what I don't have. And I'm hoping you give me what I need. And that's the wrong reason to do anything. It always goes back to checking our own motives. We don't like sitting quietly by ourselves. But learning who you are requires time alone, turning off the television, turning off the radio, getting away from your friends, and being very vulnerable and honest about how you think, how you feel, and how you behave.
We have another fabulous question, since you're talking about people who are in high demand jobs where we have to care for people. Morgan asked, what are some tools or ways that people who work in high stress environments like first responders, doctors, teachers, childcare providers can navigate a day-to-day stress that's part of their career? We're caregivers. We have to be available. Our needs aren't necessarily priority. We have to turn on the as we say in my office, it's showtime. Whatever's going on in your life, it doesn't matter. We have patients we got to take care of. It's showtime. So you're always on for somebody else because you have to take care of somebody else. That's your job.
Yeah, 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 that's what they tell us. So, do you believe we teach people how to treat us?
I think we teach people how to treat us. However, when you are by profession a caregiver,
Mhm.
your feelings don't matter. You are responsible for the care of that person that's in your chair or that's in your office or whatever. At that point, everything about you, what's going on at home, what's going on around your world, doesn't matter. It's
Mhm.
ministering to the need of that particular person that's sitting in your chair.
Mhm.
So for me, I I do this to decompress when I'm in my car on my way home. And
Mhm.
thankfully, I live a long enough distance away from my office that my drive is enough that when I get home, I don't have any of that. All of
Right.
that is in the car or on I-75.
Mhm.
But that's how I've learned to cope is I don't bring it home. I just don't
Right.
bring any of it home. Um,
Well, here's
my
another issue that high professional people do. They don't take lunch breaks.
right.
They have
We
starting
work
and
through
quitting
lunch.
times.
We
They
work through lunch.
don't,
We work
yeah.
late. Mm-hmm.
You won't get up and walk away from your desk. See, again, it's managing you. But because we don't do these things, we've told people it is okay to expect us never to leave our desk. We've told people that we don't need a break. We don't even need
Mhm.
food because we won't even eat lunch. We barely need sleep. We're telling people how to treat us by our own behaviors. At some point, you have to say no, back to boundaries. We're right back to boundaries. I take off at this hour of the day. No, this is my lunch break. I'll be back. Oh, I moved it today, but I'll be back to my normal time tomorrow. These are the things that you do during the day at work that allows you to get away from the pressure cooker long enough to take some deep breaths. You know, deep breathing is wonderful. Moving. If you have a sedentary job and you're on your butt all the time, get up and move. It helps get that tension out of your body. Drinking water, water, and getting healthy food in your body literally will allow you to be more productive in work. Where you think you're more productive because you've worked all day, you're actually less productive. Research shows it. We are more productive when we take those small breaks, when we nourish our bodies, when we hydrate. We are far better, far more engaged and present in the moment as helpers when we take care of ourselves first.
That's
Mm.
right. And a lot of times we get into these patterns of what you said, going, not thinking about ourselves. And it starts from day one on the job because we want to make a good impression and all these things. And so we feel like we got to do everything and miss lunch and all these other things. And we're setting a precedent that is not healthily sustainable over time. And like Joe said, moving, even going outside, walk to your car, take some deep breaths. All those things help to kind of give you a mini reset. And then, of course, like you said, on the way home, trying to decompress in a way that feels good to you, whether it's listening to music, whether it's talking to a friend on the phone, or what have you, so that you're not so overburdened with that when you get home and take it in the house with you.
That's a good advice. I'm going to pivot a little bit because I've gotten a lot of questions about grief and
Mhm.
managing grief to keep living.
Yeah.
Thoughts on that?
Simone and I were talking about this the other day and how we have, if this is not a good word, y'all just go with it. We've denormalized grieving.
Mm.
There's this expectation that we had the funeral. Why are you still crying? Well, because I just lost my mama of 40, 50, 60 years. That's why I'm still crying. There is nothing wrong with grief. Grief is very normal. It is very healthy, and no two people grieve alike. I give everybody who is listening to this dialogue, permission to grieve, wherever you need to grieve and however you need to grieve. We think that there should be a time that you stop. My mom died in 2011, and I still have my mommy moments, as I call them. I can walk in a room and let me smell Estee Lauder. I might boo-hoo in front of everybody, and I go, give me a moment. And then I dab my little eyes, I get myself together, and I get back in the game. But I let those tears flow if that's what I need to do at that moment. Here's the question. Are we able still to get up, groom ourselves, go to work, take care of our daily lives? Then we're okay. Yes, you may be sad, and it will pass, but it passes faster if you don't try to suppress it. Most people try to pretend like they're not feeling that way, and we find that a lot in the church. Absent from the body means present with the Lord. That is true. But you lost something. You lost that person's presence right here, and it is absolutely okay to grieve. Even Jesus wept. So I encourage you to be in touch with how you're feeling. Get a journal. Write about that person. If you have a photo album of them, take yourself through the photo album and enjoy looking at the pictures. I know the first year after my mother passed, I put on one of her aprons at Thanksgiving. She and I always cooked Thanksgiving together. And so that meant I had to cook what I cooked and cooked what she cooked. So I did have some conversation with her about that. But I had her apron on, and it made me feel closer to her while I was cooking the meal. Nobody else thought about the fact that this was the first Thanksgiving without my mother. I thought about it. It was my grief, and it's mine to manage, and it's mine to work through. And I don't need anybody's permission to grieve, and neither do you.
That's a good word. I think a lot of times, like you said, we feel like there's a time limit on how long we can grieve. This recently, Regina King was on Good Morning America, and she said, grief is love that has no place to go. And that just so resonated with me because that's exactly what it is. I'm missing the person that I love, and I can't touch them, feel them anymore, but I still have them in my heart.
Yeah.
And that's where that love resides now. What are your thoughts, Simone?
I think that grief does not have a time limit because it could be years down the line, like Joe said, and it's a smell, or it's a song, or it's a feeling or place that you find yourself that you used to go with that person. And that feeling of loss comes rushing back to you. And it doesn't just have to be a death. It could be people grieve over lots of things. We have lots of losses in our lives, whether it's the loss of a relationship. Sometimes when our kids grow up and move out, we have to figure out who we are. And so it's that loss of being, not necessarily not being a parent, but being that day-to-day in the life type parent. Loss of friendships, loss comes in many different phases and shapes and sizes and things like that. But it's how we deal with them, like Joe said, that makes the difference. Allowing yourself to experience your feelings. A lot of times people will try and push aside those feelings and try to avoid them and not want to experience them. But experiencing those feelings is part of the healing process, and giving yourself permission to do so is a gift.
Okay, I'm going to pivot again. I got a lot of good questions, and and some of these resonate with me. So I need my own advice on this one. There are questions about how do you manage your job and motherhood when the little ones get on your nerves?
Send them to their daddy. No, I'm joking.
Because the question is, I have little ones and I have to work, and the stress of trying to do all of that is exhausting.
Yeah.
It is. And so this is where we go back to having to have some form of self-care for yourself, being able to take some time. Maybe you need time away from the children. Yes, all of us have had that experience with, what am I going to do with you? You know, but if they're old enough to send them to their rooms for a while so that you can have a little break, that might be an option. Maybe you need to get a babysitter and get some time away with your friends, or even send them to visit a relative or their father, or, you know, send them on play dates and things like that. But the key is, I believe, is to find some time to take care of you, because what happens when they're really on your nerves is because you're likely tired. You got a lot on your plate. You're trying to do a lot of things, just like we mentioned earlier. And so trying to do some form of self-care, I think is critical. What do you think, Joe?
I think you're right on point. I add another piece to it is that usually when children start getting on your nerves, not only are you tired, but they're tired of not having you as much as they need you. And
That's a
they'll
good
act up
point.
to get your attention in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to touch on something that probably feels like has nothing to do with this conversation, but I think it has everything to do with it. And I'm swinging back to boundaries just for a minute and self-care a little bit. Simone is right. You need your time. You need that place where you can just be an adult all by yourself with that little one's latching onto you. And almost everything we talk about in terms of getting away requires money. And I would say it is the lack of resources that keep us from doing some of the things that we talk about. And I believe with all of my heart, one of the greatest boundaries and one of the greatest self-care moves you can ever make is to manage your budget, to live by a budget, and cause yourself to get to a place where you can get away when you need to get away, that you can do some things with your kids that are fun and engaging without you all having to be cooped up in the house all the time, where you can, you know, like you said, send them to grandma's or to somebody else's house, because it still costs money to do that. Having children takes absolutely everything from you. It just does. They require the best of you. And shouldn't they get the best of you? I would say they should. They don't care about the clothes they wear. They do not care about how their bedroom is decorated. They don't care how big the screen is on the TV. They don't even care if they have an iPad. All they care about is having you. They want your love and your time and your attention more than anything. And I would say, work the boundaries so that you can give your children that, to include proper and on-time bedtimes. That's hard. But if you can get them in bed by a certain hour, guess what you then get is your time by yourself. I know being a mother is challenging and difficult. I have lived that world with two sons who were 2 years apart. And there were days that I just didn't even know how I was going to make it. And somebody gave me that wisdom, and it was a game changer for me. And so I pass that on to you all.
Do you think that there are different expectations for working mothers than working fathers?
Mm-hmm. Without a
Yes, for
doubt.
sure.
And so as a working mother, the responsibility, like you said, we took on all the other responsibilities and didn't let go of the home. So as women, as mothers, working mothers,
Mm-hmm.
what are the best ways for us to prioritize? Because like you said, we can't do it all. What are the best ways for us to prioritize?
Okay, Simone, you got this one, girl. How are we gonna
Some of the
prioritize?
best, some of the best ways to prioritize is to look at what things have to get done. Where do you absolutely have to be? and prioritize that way, because with everything on your plate, something's going to have to give at some point. And better for you to look at what you can adjust to make it a little easier for yourself than for things to adjust themselves and pieces
Mhm.
start falling that you don't want to fall.
Yeah.
So we have to work, right? But
Mhm.
setting some of those tools in place that were mentioned earlier, having your boundaries at work, giving your kids bedtime, and giving your kids a bedtime gives you extra time in your day. It gives you back some time. It may not feel like extra time, but it's extra when your kids don't have a bedtime and all of you are up until 11 o'clock. So really looking at what the critical needs are, and prioritizing those things. Okay, the kids got up and everybody's bed is not made perfectly in the morning. Are you going to fight about that and then start your day off stressful? How big of a deal is that? Is it a bigger deal for them to get dressed and get breakfast and so you all can get out the door? So picking your battles is another thing I would say to help prioritize things. Everything doesn't have to be done, and everything might not need to be done by you.
I'm gonna tap into your
Asking for
family therapist part,
help
Simone.
in your
I'm gonna switch your hat to your marriage and family therapist side because we struck
okay.
a nerve. Look, we struck a nerve in the chat room. They're
Okay.
like, how do you make your partner help? Well, how do we make them help? How do you help men understand, working men understand that you're a working mom? How do we help our partners help us?
Mm.
I think we really have to communicate and really impart upon them the importance of their help. Um, and are needing their help. Sometimes they just don't understand. It's a different thing if they just don't want to. That's a whole nother situation that you have to tackle, probably in couples therapy. But asking for what you need is critical. A lot of times couples assume different things about what the other person wants, what the other person needs, or what I can and cannot do, and they are missing each other. The other thing, if you ask for your husband's help, don't criticize,
Wow.
because he may not do it like you do it. But then here's the question. Would you rather have help doing it, or would you rather have it your way? A lot of times we say, I want it both ways, but you can't have it both ways.
Mm-mm.
So if he's going to do things and he's going to help you, allow him to do it his way. The important thing is that it's getting done. Because if you criticize him, he's going to just say, forget it and not do it, or he's going to really intentionally do a poor job so that you don't ask him to do it anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So ask for what you need, encourage. And sometimes, I kind of hesitate to say this, but some people need a thank you, right? And a lot of times we feel like, well, why should I have to say thank you? You they daddy, you should be doing this, that, and the other thing. But sometimes when they are not used to doing it and they start helping out in a way, showing some appreciation will encourage them to keep going. And so I would say, ask for what you need, be careful about criticisms, and be encouraging. So don't say, well, that shirt doesn't go with those pants. Is the kid dressed? Do they look decent? It may not be exactly how you would do it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, are they cleaned?
how they-
So yeah,
Okay, Joe, your
That's
Oh,
turn.
that's so important. Listen, I was over here hitting my reaction buttons. I had to put my glasses on to find them. But I hit my reaction buttons. I was thumbs upping and clapping and sending up hearts. Oh my goodness gracious. And here's the other thing. Simone, tell me, have you seen this? Where, you know, the female is angry because he didn't do something, and you ask, well, did you tell him? And the answer is, well, he should have figured it out. Couldn't he tell I was angry? Well, shucks fire, you're probably angry a lot, and he's not sure what you're angry
what
about.
it is,
Probably avoiding.
exactly. Yes, yes,
So you do have to communicate. You've got to share, but to bring it all the way back to where Simone started, you can't change them.
Mm.
And here's real world. Now, don't get mad at me. Don't throw eggs at the screen. But these were conversations that should have been had before we said I do, before we decided to have children. And we were all so in love, right? I raised my hand because I didn't have the conversation either. But we should have all had these conversations, our expectation. The expectation is we will take care of the kids in the home. That's the expectation. We're the ones who've changed the expectation, not the men. It's the women who've changed it, and rightfully so. Don't get me wrong. But they walk in with it's understood. You cook and clean, and you take care of the kids unless there's been a conversation about that.
So the important thing is to have the conversation and to have clear understanding of your expectations
Yes.
and have open communication so that we can partner together to make the family work. If both of us are working outside of the home, both of us have these kids that we have to take care of, the distribution of responsibilities is necessary, but the first step is conversation.
Yes, and the
Absolutely.
reality is that that individual may not change. They just may not. And I think that's why you hear the frustration. You said the chat blew up about this.
Girl, chat blew up.
Yeah, they've had these conversations and nothing has changed. The reality of it is that they may not change. The only person you can change, though, is you.
So
How
let's
you
talk
respond
about
to
that.
them.
Let's talk about that because one of the questions was, how do you hold them accountable? And your answer is, we can't change them. So if we can't change them, but we still have all of these responsibilities, how do we change ourselves to be peaceful when the situation remains the same?
You have to look at what is in your control. That's where you start. What can I control? Obviously, we can control our behavior. We can control our emotions as part of our emotional intelligence. A lot of us don't practice it. The only emotions we kind of hang around with comfort is angry. You know, we can get angry, but we've left off all the other emotions and don't know how to manage them. But we can control ourselves. We can control our emotions. We can control how things happen with the children. If they're not involved with them, you get to control what the children do, what they don't do. You get to control the time.
Mm-hmm.
You get to control if you eat out or if you cook. You get to control if you hire a housekeeper to clean the house, since you're doing it all by yourself. Look at what you can control. The
With
goal
scheduling help, like having schedules that we both agree upon, with scheduling help?
Scheduling is always important. But see, that's back to communication. That's back to you've got a person who's engaged with dialogue with you, who's willing to work with you. I think just saying you all need to communicate puts that couple on the right path and they're down the road. Well, what I'm hearing is that these are the women who feel like I've been saying this, I've been asking for help. I can't do this by myself. These are his children too. He eats like I eat. He wears clothes and they need to be washed like my clothes do. The toilet he uses, I'm cleaning, and they want a partnership and they're having a hard time getting one. This is the person you all need to be calling. Right? And she can help you.
We're gonna post your information, Simone, so that they can call you. We're gonna post your information so they can call you.
Exactly. And that's a part of what you can control. Guess what? You could go to therapy even if he doesn't want to.
right.
I've had women who show up in therapy and the husband doesn't show up. They work on themselves. And guess who change after they work on themselves? The husbands.
That's right. Because whenever you change, other people will have to change something too. They may not even realize that they're changing in response or reaction to the changes that you've made, but they may be. And you mentioned our contact information. I have to give that to you. I don't think I gave it to you later.
We'll post it in
But
the chat and we'll put it on our website, all of that information so that they can get in touch with you, because it sounds like, based on the chat, that a lot of people need to talk to you.
okay, I'll have to give that to you then.
Yep.
So let's talk about depression,
Mm.
pivoting again. And I just want to say, I am so enjoying this conversation with you two very wise women.
We're enjoying it too.
Yes.
The question about depression is, how do we, when we've acknowledged that we are facing depression, how do we balance our work and our life when we know that we have already been diagnosed with depression? At what point is medication necessary?
Okay. I would say the answer to that question lies with that individual and their doctor. And I'm not deflecting, but there are so many variables that go into what to describe, when to describe, prescribe, and how to prescribe, that to sit here and throw out a pat answer would be unfair and unethical. I can say this though, if you have been diagnosed and you are seeing a therapist, these are the conversations you should be having with them. If you have been diagnosed and you are not seeing a therapist, I am going to recommend that you start seeing a therapist right away. The other thing I'm going to recommend you do is you see your medical doctor and get a physical. Sometimes there are things going on with our body that can cause us to also experience mental health disorders. So it's important that you do that. Don't ignore your physical health. The things you can control. You'll hear me say that a lot. There's a lot that's in your hand that you can do something about. Are you exercising? Are you eating healthy? And eating healthy doesn't mean getting the grilled chicken sandwich from Chick-fil-A. That's a good start. But eating healthy really starts with cooking for yourself, getting lean cuts of meats, fresh fruits and vegetables as much as possible, whole grains, not processed grains like bread, and lots of water. And if I didn't say it, exercise. Just getting out, going for a walk for 15 minutes literally can elevate your mood. When I talk about those types of things, I say that to say that is your medicine. A prescription may be necessary, but your first line of defense for any mental health disorder is taking care of your physical body by eating well, hydrating, exercising, and if I didn't say it, getting the proper amount of sleep. We think we can function, especially as women who are professionals, on 6 and 5 hours of sleep day after day after day. It is taking a toll on you, and you don't even know it has because it's become your new norm. You have got to take care of your bodies.
And don't be afraid to use your voice. A lot of times when people go to the doctor, they don't speak up. You have to speak up. And like Joe said, it's a collaborative decision between a person and their doctor as to whether or not medication is necessary. And ask those questions that you have. Don't be afraid to really lay it out there on the line. And sure, you should, if you don't have a therapist, I would encourage you to get one, and discuss your concerns and things with your therapist. But ultimately, that decision is up to you.
Can I add one more thing, Donna, to that? I think a lot of people take a shortcut when it comes to medication. They'll go to their medical doctor, their primary caregiver, and they are now asking the right questions about anxiety and depression. And sometimes they'll leave with the medication and then it doesn't work well and then they discard it and just stop using it. A psychiatrist is very different in that it is their job to work with you to get the right dose and the right type of medicine based on the assessment that they have done with you. Some psychiatrists actually also do therapy, some do not. If you get one that does, then they really know your story and they're able to really dial in. If not, definitely work with your therapist in conjunction with your psychiatrist. Because what we have found is quite often a lot of mental health disorders are unprocessed trauma. They're the result of unprocessed trauma. That's why the therapist is so important. We as a culture in particular carry a collective trauma, and we carry generational trauma. And for that reason, sometimes we're dealing with things, again, that we think are normal that really aren't normal. I know it's in vogue now just to say you have a therapist, but I think there's so much value in sitting down with someone who's not judging you, criticizing you, who knows how to share space with you and help you identify what's really going on so you can move your life in the direction that you want it to go in.
One final question is, why are anxiety and depression often linked, and can you have one without the other?
Yes, you can have one without the other. And they're often linked because some of the symptomology can be the same. And people who are anxious, the anxiety can take over so much that they're kind of they're not able to actually function well, which then could cause this sadness and lead into depression as well. But certainly they can be separate. But oftentimes, like Joe mentioned, there can be some comorbidity there.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, any final thoughts that you would like to share with our audience? I'll start with you, Joe.
I would say that you are the expert of your life. You know exactly what you need. You know exactly what you want. And I will tell you to take the bold step to make sure that you treat yourself like the star on the ice that you are. Your mental health determines the rest of your existence. If your mental health is not healthy, your body won't be healthy. Your behavior won't be healthy. Your relationships won't be healthy. There's a commercial that comes on, I forgot which medicine it's for, but it says, "Where does depression hurt?" And the answer is everywhere. And it's the same thing with anxiety or any other mental health disorder. We are professionals. We are professionals because we want to be, but it does not mean that we have to neglect ourselves to do the profession that we have chosen. Make yourself first.
Excellent. Simone?
I would like to emphasize that you are important and you matter, and how you feel matters. How you show up for not only other people, but how you show up for yourself matters. And one of the best things you can do is to take care of yourself so that you show up in a way that gives you the opportunity to exemplify the life that you want to have, and that you can do the things that you want to do, and also be there for people who need you in life. So in short, I would say, please take care of yourself because you're worth it and you matter and you're important.
Well, ladies, again, this has been a phenomenal evening of self-care, just to be able to talk through the things that weigh us down. Thank you for being vulnerable and sharing. Thank you for your wisdom and advice. And I appreciate you. And on behalf of Atlanta Suburban Alumni Chapter, we thank you for being a panelist. Our president, Sabrina Clark, on behalf of her, I would like to thank you as well. So with that said, I hope everyone that has participated with us, all the wonderful questions submitted, I hope the conversation has helped you. And I look forward to the next time that Atlanta Suburban Alumni Chapter has something for you. NG, thank you so much. Thank you.